So the myth that I chose was the marriage of Njord and Skadi. And so we're just going to go ahead and present this. Okay, so the marriage of Njord and Skadi is a Norse myth. Here's the background of it. It's a Norse myth, which is like Scandinavian, and it comes from the time of the Vikings. So you know about the Vikings, they would just fight and drink a lot of alcohol. It's pretty much what they did. So this story in particular is a romance story between a giantess and one of the gods. Technically, there wasn't really any romance involved, but that's what it's kind of considered. It's a marriage, so that's what it's considered. It was written around the 13th century, so it was a little while ago. Jumping into the summary, so you guys can kind of get an idea of what this story is really about. These stories are usually really funny, and that's why I picked this one. So, Skadi's father, had a prisoner that escaped, and so he goes off and tries to find this prisoner, and also there was, some apples involved, because who doesn't want to involve apples in a story? But he dies, and Skadi, he doesn't return, so Skadi, wants to get her stuff together and go find him and, seek vengeance on whoever murdered him, and just is super upset and sad and angry that somebody killed her father. I mean, who wouldn't be, but she is. So, Skadi sets off. She gets all of her stuff, her weapons, her armor all together, and she goes to Asgard. And when she gets there, the gods, particularly Odin, sees Skadi near the walls, and he made a conclusion that he did not want any more fights. He didn't want any more drama. He just wanted to be done with all of this stuff, and he just wanted peace. So Odin comes out, and he's like, "Yo, Skadi, how about we just give you some gold instead for killing your father, because we don't want to fight." They really are trying to bribe her with money right now for the murder of her father. But Skadi says that her father was already rich, and she inherits everything that he already had. So she said, "No, I don't want this gold. I'm already dripping in money. Get that away from me." So they ask her what they can give her and what she wants. So Skadi tells them that she wants a husband and she wants a lot of laughter. And so when she wants a husband, she meant she wanted Balder, but they kind of put some rules into this choosing, and so she couldn't kind of do that. But the gods agreed to give Skadi a husband and laughter. They said that she could pick any one of the gods, but she had to pick them by their feet. So she wasn't allowed to see anything of the gods except for their feet. So obviously she picked the one that had the best looking feet, the most clean, the best shaped, healthy feet. So she picked this pair of feet, and thinking that it was going to be Balder, but it was not. She picked Njord, and so she was very shocked whenever they revealed him to her, and she wasn't too happy about it, but she was okay, because she agreed to this, so she kind of has to be okay with this. So Njord is the god of the seafarers and sea harvests and all of that. He lives in the coast, not on the ocean. He lives he prefers to be on the coast. So Skadi didn't really want him. She wanted Balder, but she says, "All right, I got my husband, but you guys still haven't made me laugh yet." So Odin calls for Loki, and Skadi was like, "You guys will never make me laugh again," because she's so upset and being dramatic about everybody would be sad if their father died, but she's like, "I will never laugh, I will never smile again, my father's dead." So Loki comes along and decides to give her a run for her money. He is so funny, and he definitely proves her wrong when it comes to making her laugh. So Loki comes along, and she doesn't really know this, but Loki was one of the ones that led her father to die. It doesn't really say if it was an accident or not, but he was one of the ones that kind of was a part of this journey. So he's making her laugh now, I guess, to make up for that. Who knows? But Loki decides to make her laugh by getting a rope and tying one end to the goat and the other end to his testicles and playing tug of war. So you can imagine just like a person and a goat playing tug of war with their testicles and, a goat. So that would make you laugh too. So Loki fell back on Skadi, obviously. I mean, who wouldn't after you're playing tug of war with your balls? So Skadi laughed, and so she got that wish fulfilled. And so after she started laughing, Skadi and Njord decide to leave together because, they're married now. And so they go to each other's homes. They live in two different places. Skadi lives in the mountains. Njord lives on the coast. And so they decide to stay 9 nights at one place and 9 nights at the other. They both decide that they hate where each other lives. Like, Skadi hates the coast. Njord hates the mountains and the snow. And so they decide to live apart, ultimately, leading to a divorce. So Skadi got the laughter out of it, but she only got a husband for 18 days. So she kind of only got, one end of that deal there. Talking a little bit about the culture of Norse mythology, Viking culture is really funny. It has to do with the Vikings, and Vikings had limited access to clean water. They didn't have the tools to fix that, but they had a lot of alcohol, so they drank a lot of alcohol, mostly mead. This is a type of alcohol that was sweetened with honey. This picture right here is what mead is. Obviously, this is current times, but that's pretty much what it looked like a little bit like honey, like beer. So they would rob places, raid places, fight people, trying to prove their manhood. And after this, they would celebrate. They'd all get together, drink a ton of alcohol, even though they're already drunk because they start drinking at 9 in the morning. And then they would just talk and party and just have a good time together because they just robbed people and now have a bunch of riches. So Snorri Sturluson, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce that. There was a few different pronunciations, but he was a poet in the ancient Norse times, and he wrote many of these stories. It's kind of hard to see who exactly wrote a lot of these stories, and a lot of them have been lost because they weren't exactly written down back then. They were mostly verbally told, so a lot of them have been lost. Another thing about Viking culture is that women had more rights in Viking society. Women were not Vikings, but, they're their wives or their children, so they still existed there, but they did, have more rights than other women did in other societies. There are a few different symbols in this, and one of them is the number 9. Number 9 is big in Norse mythology, but in this case, it means that there was a big change coming. So they slept at each other's homes for 9 nights each, and before separating. So that separation was a big deal, and that number 9 was a symbol that something big was about to change. Another symbol is the coast versus the mountains. Some people say that this has to do with seasons, so winter versus summer. Winter is the mountains, there's snow. Summer is the coast because the beach, you like to go swimming at the beach and all of that during summertime. And then these seasons can be related to dark versus light. Winter is dark, summer is light, sun, clouds kind of thing. So this dark versus light kind of can represent the characters as she is very depressed and sad because her father's died, so she can represent the dark side. And Njord, on the other hand, is happy, just living his best life, so he's more on the light. So I put in this little yin-yang symbol because they're complete opposites, and that's just what Skadi and Njord were, complete opposites. So this story is more of a trickster myth because Loki and Odin are in it, and Skadi and Njord weren't tricksters, but Loki and Odin were, and they tricked her into marrying Njord instead of Balder, which, led to a divorce. That's the whole point of this story. So, trickster myth. So this marks one of the most famous and first divorces. Usually deities stay together, except for a few Greek gods and goddesses, because some of them had a divorce, particularly Zeus, because he couldn't keep his stuff in his pants and just wanted to try out all the women. So this was surprising. But another thing is like Viking women could divorce their husbands. That was allowed, unlike in Greek and Sumerian myths, they really couldn't. Some could, but you really weren't supposed to. It was very rare. Usually it was the men because they were like patriarchal societies. But Viking women, strong, mighty Viking women, could divorce their husbands. Honestly, this is kind of surprising because Vikings seem like the more manly ones, trying to always prove their manhood by robbing and killing people. But their women did have more rights to divorce them. So that is a thing. So moving on to like our conclusion. These stories, Norse stories, were often told verbally. Vikings were always drunk. They started drinking at 9 in the morning until like they'd go rob and do their stuff and drink right after that. So they were drunk all the time. Probably a lot of them had alcohol poisoning. But you can imagine all these drunk people telling drunk stories often tend to be very funny. I mean, obviously, tying a rope to a goat and to your balls and playing tug of war is something that's not normally seen, and so I just think Norse stories are super funny and they're just interesting to read. So, obviously, stories told by drunk Vikings. Who wouldn't enjoy those? So, this story and some of the other stories too, but this story in particular shows the difficulties in marriage. Marriage is obviously not always sunshine and rainbows, but this shows like how arranged marriages can have some problems, and also like when two people are completely opposite, then they don't want to be around each other's things. Like, she didn't want to be in the ocean around the coast. He did not want to be in the mountains skiing, and so they were very opposite. They just kind of wanted to go about and do their own things, so they both agreed to just separate and go their own ways. And this happens in real life now too, so that's very, relevant. And so the last thing is that Viking women had more rights than other women did. Why this is the case, I really don't know. Maybe they were just, they could have just been too drunk to like make any rules. But obviously it's a good thing that they did have more rights. Sad for the women in like Greek and Mesopotamia and all those other places that didn't have as many rights, but they did, and so they used these to their advantage, and that was a good thing for them. They could actually have a say in things. So these are my sources that I used, and you can go through those if you want to, but nobody really wants to look at those except for the teacher, so you don't really have to look at those. So that was my story about the marriage of Njord and Skadi, and I hope you enjoy it. If you like crazy stories about tug of war with a goat and your genitalia, go ahead and read it. It's super funny. 10 out of 10.